Sarah, can you hear me? Wangari, good afternoon. Yes, welcome everybody to today's session, which will be addressing the issues of the broken supply chains. So the big question is, who will come to the rescue of the broken supply chains? And I will be a moderator today. My name is Rashid. You can call me Rashid Mbwiza. I'm a young mediator. I'm also a legal practitioner, not yet admitted, but I'm a postgraduate candidate at the Kenya School of Law. So feel welcome. And my co-host will be Ater, also with the assistance of Ms. Wangari. And today I hope we're going to have a very nice session discussing issues to do with the broken supply chains that we are currently seeing in the business area, in the policy formulation, the legal perspectives, and also in the psychosocial perspectives. So feel free to interact with the speakers. And before we proceed, I'd like us to start the session with the National Anthem, which is our normal opening prayer. And we're going to sing the first stanza in Kiswahili. So can we begin? Let's begin. E Mungu nguvu yetu,
ilete baraka
kwetu, haki iwe ngao na mlinzi, na tukae na udugu, amani na uhuru, raha tupate na ustawi. So welcome once again, everybody. Welcome once again, everyone. And feel free to have a session today. Enjoy the session. We're going to be guided by Mr. Gibson Nyamato, who will join us later because he's held up somewhere, but he'll join us later. So at the moment, for the next 30 minutes, which he will be away, I'd like us to have this conversation about the supply chains. Before they're broken, what are they? And when they're broken, what are the possible conflict areas that might be there for us to explore as mediators, as conflict resolution experts, and as people who are focused in creating an environment that is conflict competent. So before I proceed any further, let me see, there's someone trying to come in. Let me admit. Oh, it's all good. So before we proceed further, I'd like us to identify what is this supply chains. Maybe according to what I know, according to my school of thought, as my fellow learned counsels usually like to say, according to their school of thoughts, is a supply chain, in my perspective, is a form, is a systematic, or rather a way in which services or goods are moved from the producers, from when they are raw materials to manufacturers or the producers up to the consumer. So what usually happens when there's a broken supply chain is the big question today, and we're going to see how we can be able to manage disputes that arise in between these supply chains. Where can disputes arise? For instance, we can see that as a normal Kenyan, you might go to the shop, you want to buy something. You go to a retail shop. When you go there, you are the buyer and there is the seller there. Possible conflict that might arise at that stage. Leave that alone. Let's look at the retailer connection with the connection with the supplier. The supplier, the person who brings the goods to the retailer, or the person whom the retailer buys the goods from or services from. Where do they scrub? Where do they have friction? When they have friction, what do they do? How will we as mediators come to the rescue when these people are in conflict or are in need of their disputes being resolved? So it is a very unique area, and it is one area that as mediators should have a focus on. And so according to what we had planned today that Mr. Nyamato was going to talk about is how then are the suppliers to the government, to the corporates, to the small and medium enterprises, to the NGOs and the international based companies. How are they then going to manage the ongoing crises that are happening? How are they going to manage their future crises? Who is going to manage them? And what should be done to make sure that we achieve a situation where there's a win-win for the supplier, for the governments, for the corporates, and for the mediators. So, if we look at the local perspective, the supply chains, there has been issues. Okay, we know these trade. What do we call them? These companies that trade using trucks. They move stuff from Mombasa to Nairobi to Nakuru to Naivasha, or even to Uganda, sometimes to Tanzania. When you look at this movement of goods in Kenya, out of Kenya, we see that in some way there has emerged areas of conflict. Probably one, because of the government directives that all truck drivers are supposed to stop by checkpoints to be tested or to produce certificates to prove that they have been tested for COVID-19, for instance. And there is this conflict where the government of Kenya might feel, or rather might approve that that a Tanzanian who comes to Kenya might not be positive, or rather might have refused to take a test. So there might be some conflict between Tanzanian authorities and Kenyan authorities on the other end, where now it grows. This conflict grows and affects the business, the real business of the owner of the goods that are being transported from one country to another. And further, it affects the job of this person, the driver. It affects how they work. It affects mentally. It affects them because they're subjected to constant testing, which is very frustrating at each border, at each movement that they make across the border. Supposed to be tested, or rather to show a certificate that they have been tested. So that is one perspective to look at it. In another way, you can look at the impact of the goods, or of the broken supply chain from the manufacturer to the supplier. When due to the advent of COVID-19, we have seen that businesses have been affected. Manufacturers have stalled in manufacturing goods processing. Companies have slowed down their processing, the rate of processing their goods, because the consumer does not have the usual capacity to purchase. The supplier does not know who they're going to supply, because the consumer is either not in need at that moment, this particular moment of COVID-19, or they do not find it as a necessity. It is a secondary want. So what happens? So who comes to the rescue of the broken supply chains? That is the big question today. And I'm just brainstorming on a few things here so that we can get a picture of what is before us today. And just in case somebody has a question or a comment, you can use the chat facility. That is, when you click at the more button, you can see the chat facilities there. You can choose it, and then you can send your chat there so that we can get the conversation going here beyond just presentation, but also we can chat. You can send me a private message if there's something you feel you want me to say, but but you are afraid maybe, or you need some clarification on something and you feel it's too private. You can clarify it through my private chat there. So feel free to and enjoy this session. And I'd like you to know that today is one day that we are going to explore one field that we have not, as Wasilianahub, we have not yet explored. And I hope that we are going to learn a lot, and we are going to be better mediators, better conflict resolution experts, and we are going to improve our competence in the mediation field. What else I can say is, in case there's any comment you'd like to say, then there shall come a moment when we shall seek comments. And in case yours is very urgent and you really want to raise it now, you can use the raising your hand option facility there, which will then be visible on my side, and I'm going to allow it. I'm going to allow you, or rather, Miss Sarah might take over, and she will allow you to air your views. So feel free. I'd like to invite Miss Sarah now to address us on a few things or more that she feels should be the subject of today's session. Sarah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rashid, for the introduction. I think, as all of us are aware, we do have issues that have come up within the supply chain. And our conversation today is basically trying to explore what is our role as mediators. In which way can we be able to come in? What are the opportunities that exist for us, within that chain? What can we do? And how can we position ourselves so that we can be, one, visible, we can also be approachable, so that we can help different people to be able to deal with the issues. And I'll probably just ask us to say some of the examples that we probably have been able to see, actual examples of issues that we might be able to point out. Is there anybody who would like to share probably an example that they have seen? Perhaps Emerald, would you like to say something? Not really.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay. So I was saying, not at the moment. I'm just following the proceedings.
Okay. Thank you. Kimutai, would you perhaps have some input to give?
as the previous person has said, I'm just following the proceedings.
Mhm.
I have any questions, I'll definitely put them in the chat.
Mhm.
Maybe save them until the end when I know if there's, my question might be answered during the course of the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, okay. That's okay. So probably then, is there anybody else who might have, I haven't seen any questions or comments coming in. As mentioned earlier, then we do have our speaker coming in a little, in just a little while, maybe in the next 10 minutes or so. But perhaps just to get the discussion going and you know, to have some thoughts around the whole process. Okay, probably Wangari, would you like to say something?
Yes, good evening and thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mediator Sarah and Mediator Rashid for hosting this session, and also the colleagues who are on board. I'm looking at the aspect of who will come to the rescue of broken supply chains, and one of the readings I've been doing is with regard to the journey of or what you call the history of supply chain management. I've posted in the chat a link which members and guests can also look at and be able to see one of the histories that's taken to be the history of supply chain management. And I'll just read, it comes from the CERASIS, CERASIS.com on the history of supply chain management. And the trend, I mean, goes all the way even beyond 1980, but it points out that perhaps the most important trend for logistics in the 1990s was that it had begun to get tremendous recognition in industry as being very expensive, very important, and very complex. As being very expensive, very important, and very complex. Company executives became aware of logistics as an area where they had the opportunity to significantly improve the bottom line if they were willing to invest in trained professionals and a new technology. When I went through that statement, for me, it indicated to me that the supply chain is an area of key interest to CEOs, the CFOs, who I perceive as the people who are mainly the ones who are concerned with especially the bottom line of the organization. And that being the case, then the area that relates to what normally we call procurement management, people who are the procurement managers are probably an area that we as mediators need to start giving due attention to. Secondly, I wish to bring to our attention, just as young mediator Rashid has done as an introduction with regard to the truck drivers, the increasing, what seems to be an increasing concern in the retail trade in Kenya when it comes to the supermarkets. We have witnessed the Kenyan-based supermarkets closing shop, Nakumat closed shop, Uchumi closed shop. Right now, there is wind that some of the other retailers that are still in the market, that there are issues with regard to them either paying suppliers, the inventory that they are being able to maintain, them being able to pay their customers, and it would also mean also just the entire distribution network, them being able to access loans, and also some of them being bought out. So it would be interesting for us to round up our discussion with regard to those two particular areas. One, in terms of how it is possible to get through to the company executives in the area, and especially in the context of the decision makers with regard to how procurement and also how the organization makes decisions in such areas. And then also secondly, the views of members with regard to how we can be able to have mediation as a discussion for the retail trade I know that retailers have an association. So if there, in case there are any persons who even had engagement with such bodies or any of the retail players. Thank you very much, Mediator Sarah.
Okay, thank you, Wangari, for that overview and guidance. Very good, background information that you have shared. I think as we proceed and probably as we wait, a question that Wangari has brought up is how do we get through to the company executives? How can we make mediation discussion as an option for some of the issues that are faced? And probably we could just have an open discussion concerning how do we make the company executives aware that we mediators are present, and actually we mediators are up to the task that is required of us.
Just to comment on something,
Yes.
I'd like to say,
okay.
There's a hand that has been raised, but maybe just before the hand, I'd just like to add that we're going to see a very huge change in the corporate sector. We're going to see companies merge. We're going to see companies acquired by other companies. We're going to see a huge shift in the economic perspective of companies and how they do their businesses, because this pandemic has really taken a toll on on serious companies, big companies, especially those that deal with finances and those that deal with insurance. We're going to see a shift where now there might be, which is very likely, there's going to be mergers, there's going to be takeovers, and there's going to be amalgamations that are going to indicate that without other companies, or rather without the help of other companies, companies are not going to survive by themselves. So maybe at this time, at that moment, they might need mediators to come in and to help them understand how they're going to view contracts in that level, how they're going to view their mergers according to a mediation agreement. How are they going to handle their disputes in case there's some miscommunication and there's a misunderstanding? Then how ready is mediation to look at this opportunity and capture it instead of letting it move to other forms of dispute resolution such as arbitration? How ready are we, or how ready is the country to accommodate or to welcome mediation as a form of dispute resolution in case disputes arise in contracts? That's all. Maybe Kimutai can now give something. She raised her hand.
Thank you, Bwana Rashid. I wanted to follow up essentially on what Wangari was mentioning about how do we convince the CFOs and CEOs on the benefits or the efficacy of mediation. What I think you have to realize is that we have to appeal to their own interests. And I'm sure as mediators, we're used to trying to get the interests of the parties. But the interests of the people who come to mediation will only be if what you offer them aligns with their interests. If you're talking to a CFO, he wants to hear how much money will he save by not going to court. If you're talking to the CEO, you need to explain to him that resources which he is using to settle disputes within his organization and between his organization and other organizations or other companies can actually be freed up because he uses a more efficient way of resolving his disputes, which in essence, mediation is one tool in the box. We never think that somebody will completely utilize mediation and eliminate all disputes, but at least if you go to court, you know it's something which is very serious, where you have a complete disparity between what you view as a dispute and the person who is on the other side. And to bring this back in line with the logistics, which is what we're talking about today, I was watching a documentary on why the American system took so long to respond to COVID. And one of the things was that during the 80s, 90s, and past that, the entire companies wanted to use the Japanese principle of just-in-time sourcing, which meant that you do not have a lot of money tied up with your stocks, with your products. You have things which all get to the factory at the time when you were going to use them, which meant that supply logistics became essential to each company. But it also meant that if one aspect of the supply chain stopped working, all the others essentially ground to a halt. And if there was a problem like what happened, where the whole of the Chinese economy, factories, etc., stopped producing, the chain reaction would have caused a lot of other problems. Now, when these parties have a dispute and let's say 10% of your people are not able to produce for you, the other 90% cannot go on with their work because they cannot supply stuff. Therefore, it has a knock-on effect and it cascades down the line. And at the end of the day, if you were to sit down and try and litigate out of this issue, it will not work. Because the person who is not able to produce can also claim, look, it was essentially an act of God, or I couldn't supply to you because it wasn't supplied to me. So this is where mediation can use its skills to essentially mend the relationships and maintain the relationships between the suppliers and the people in the contracting parties. So that was something which I thought we would, should we say, expound on today and figure out a way in which we can market it to the people who are decision makers in any of the commercial entities. Thank you. That was my comment.
Thank you, Kimutai, for the wonderful comment. I really noted a lot of things from your talk, and I'd like to say it is very informative, it is very insightful, and we hope to hear more from Mr. Nyamato. Or if in case there's anyone who has a question or other comment, feel free, please, to raise your hand, and we're going to give you that opportunity to address us. So meanwhile, I can just identify what Mr. Kimutai said, that people out there, the people in the logistics field, they want to hear how much they're going to save, if they went through mediation and not litigation or any other expensive or more expensive form of dispute resolution. We need to sell our idea of saving costs, or rather being a cost-effective alternative. Also, selling the idea that mediation is going to maintain their relationships, because these suppliers and these consumers, these manufacturers, they all need each other. In one way or another, they need each other, and those relationships need to be maintained. So I think those are very nice and insightful messages from Mr. Kimutai. Is there any person with any comment? there's also there's also some provision that the global supply chain operations are critically important. This is a session that has been, this is a message that has been delivered by Ms. Wangari in the chat area. She says that global supply chain operations are critically important to business performance and success. Supply chains have grown longer, more complex, and more international, and as a consequence, have become increasingly stretched, brittle, and thin. Although modern companies acknowledge the strategic importance of supply chains, they rarely indicate sufficient legal and executive resources to ensure that supply chains are effective and protect the company interests. I believe we all see how the global supply chain operations are important to businesses and to the performance of the businesses and to their success through that angle. Maybe in another way, we can look at the reasons why these supply chains are broken. In another article that I read, they said that they might break because you, as the supplier is fragmented. The supply is fragmented. Maybe someone worked with a $400 million farm experiencing a strain on profitability, and then they asked to analyze a few millions of their spending. But what they find is that the supply chain might be too decentralized. How then will they help? How then would a dispute resolution expert help to refragment, or rather to connect the supply chain that has been broken again? That is a big question that we view. That is one of the perspectives as to one why a supply chain might be broken and how it might be mended through dispute resolution. Again, somebody in the shoes of a supplier, or rather in the supply field or in the logistic field, might want to see what are they failing at. Perhaps they're failing in their issues of auditing. Why auditing? Because some people have taken advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic, and now those persons maybe are working for the supplier, or rather in one level of the supply chain. So when there is lack of auditing, these people take advantage of the situation, because now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there's too much corruption. Now, lack of auditing is breaking these supply chains. So maybe as a mediator in that table, you see that the supplier and the manufacturer, or rather the supplier and the manufacturer, when they're in conflict, you view what could be the main cause. Could it be auditing? Bring the issue of auditing in question. You ask the parties, how recent is your audit report? How recent is how many workers do you have? How much do you expect? How much do you expect from transit? How much do you expect from as profit from your business? What is not adding up? Those questions. So probably as a mediator, I believe that is one question that is very important when you get these matters of broken supply chain that you should look at, the issue of auditing. And perhaps if there's any addition, would you, who is this? I'd like to invite Katia and Wendot to any comments. Please feel free to comment. I can see you are present, and we really are lucky to have you with us today. Katia, Miss Margaret?
Yes.
Yes, we could hear you. Maybe yes, we can hear you now.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Maybe I just make a comment and refer to the retail chain and something that I experienced. And it is only coming up now when you have mentioned it, and I've also seen it on Wangari's comment. And I didn't know that I could have had a redress when I was mistreated in a Safaricom shop. And I was just thinking, and I was saying how many other people are suffering out there and they do not know that they have mediation that can come in and help them when they are suffering such.
Yes.
So I went to a Safaricom shop. I had already called them and I told them the kind of phone that I wanted, and they had promised that when it comes and it is in supply, they will call me. So when the phone came, they called me and I was happy, I was excited. So when I went, the market person picked the phone, she quickly opened, she set it up. And when she's setting it up, I looked at it and I asked her, is this the phone that I asked for? Then she said, yes. And just in case I was wrong, I said to keep quiet. And I took it home. But reaching home, I realized it was the wrong phone. And I called her and I told her, you sold me the wrong phone. And she said, you can return it. I took my time. She did not tell me within what time I should have returned the phone. So I went on the 4th day to return the phone. This is the time I learned that it was supposed to be returned after 2 days. When I called her, she did not tell me that I had the unallowed time. So that was one, the fact that I'm going on the 4th day. Then they also said the phone is already opened. It has already been set up. There isn't much they can do. Then I told them I did not open up the phone. It was opened up by your staff. They are the same people who set it up. And now they are the same people who did not tell me within what time I should return the phone. And it was not serving my purpose. They did not take it back. I had already spent the money that I had saved for the phone. And that was it. And I had to go back with my phone, which was not going to serve me because it was not going to serve my purpose. The best solution they could tell me is I tried to talk to the supervisor. I tried to call the CEO. I couldn't get I could not access them. And so I ended up with the phone, and the best they could tell me is they could help me sell it. I think I was not going into some trade. I was looking for a phone to use. And I'm only realizing now that many people could be going through what I went through, but they do not know what would be their redress. Yeah, that's what I wanted to comment.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true. It's very, very, very true. It's happening. And we have seen many cases. Yours is one of those very serious cases that people have been experiencing out here. And we hope that Mr. Nyamato today will clarify, or rather will help us understand more about how we are going to counter these issues that are happening just before us and with very little ways to solve them when they happen, because in some way we feel like we will not get we do not have that avenue to address these issues because they are not very very common in our courts, and they're not very well known to be mediated. But now that we are learning, we are starting to understand that actually these matters can be taken before a mediator and they can help to solve this dispute. And it's going to be a win-win for both parties, or rather the reasonable steps are going to be taken to satisfy the customer from the mistreatment or lack of consideration that is done to them by the retailers. So I can see Mr. Nyamato is with us. Mr. Nyamato.
Before Rashid, before maybe he comments.
Yes.
That brings out what Salah was trying to say. How can we make ourselves visible? How can we make ourselves approachable and available to such people when they are mistreated in the retail chains?
Yes.
Because most people don't know that mediation is like now. This would have been a very good case for mediation.
Yeah.
But many people don't know that we are. How can we make ourselves visible? How can we be approachable? How can we be available even for that consumer, that literal consumer?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Ms. Margaret. Now we'll go to Mr. Asida. Is Mr. Kimutai? Mr. Kimutai just read his. Hello.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on something Margaret had said. You know that
Yes.
in that particular situation, if she was in a position, unfortunately, you go to a lawyer, you write a well-crafted letter to the actual people of the company who you're aggrieved by, and actually stipulates that this is what I went through and I expect some kind of compensation or agreement from you. From there, the mediator they can step in and say, can we take this to mediation? But unfortunately, I cannot see how the person can actually get both parties to agree that there is a dispute before the mediator becomes involved. So this is something which I may be also putting out as a challenge to everybody is, I mean, with my legal background, I can probably write the letter or help them draft their own letter to the actual person they're complaining about. But that now I'm stepping into the field of being a wakili. So how do I remain being a mediator? Thank you.
Welcome,
I don't know, Kimutai, I think you can still take it up. Maybe you can actually assist, because up to now I still hurt with the way I was treated, and I think I didn't like it at all, and I would not even like anybody to go through what I went through. So maybe it is not too late. You could still draft a letter, and we pick it up from there.
Margaret, I'm more than willing to chat with you about that. There's no problem. How long ago was it? Just how long ago?
I think I bought this phone in February.
Yes, we can. That's okay. Let's chat kando.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. I can see Mr. Yes.
Mahinda.
Yes, please. Mahinda.
My name is Mahinda. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mahinda.
I wanted to comment on what this radio has just brought about, the issue of buying an item from a shop.
Yes.
Which actually is very common. There are many millions of disputes that come up every day. But the biggest issue is, at what point can a dispute be acknowledged by both parties? Whether a letter will be written by an advocate or not, I have a legal background. Me, I'm a legal management consultant. So the biggest issue is the buyers, the purchaser, and this should be able to be bold enough to be able to indicate that there's a dispute, and the mediation actually fraternity come up with a procedure that can be able to come in the public so that they can understand that we can be able to acknowledge or report the dispute where we can get assistance like Wakili was saying. Because at the point of Wakili, sometimes it takes some time because of the formalities of seeing a Wakili and then writing a letter. The letter has to be replied by other party so that we can be able to see the dispute has been acknowledged by both parties. In a simpler way that can come up. So that one is a thought for the mediation fraternity. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Mr. Mahinda. Now we're going to give the opportunity to Mr. Gibson Nyamato to lead us with today's session. Mr. Nyamato, welcome.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Nyamato, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. And I've just come in. Hello. There seems to be some noise, Rashid.
I think they're now. Or the sound is repetitive.
Yes.
Oh.
Hello. Can you get me?
Yes, I can get you, Gibson. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the introduction, and just joined in a bit late. I was held up in traffic, but now I'm here. I was trying to follow what the last person was raising a query in regards to some phone. I didn't quite get the whole story, but I will discuss some bit of that as we follow through. The subject for discussion today, I guess, is the aspect of the broken supply chain, which has, as everyone is aware, has been brought about by COVID-19. This does not only happen here locally, but it's also affecting every supplier across the world. So there is the aspect of the international trade or the international supply chain, and then there is the aspect of the local supply chain, which I will be able to look at in different sides, because they all seem to be in the same line, but there are other things involved, especially when you're talking about international supplies. There are different laws which tend to govern that, and the local supply could be somebody supplying something here to Nakuru that is a bit different. So the discussion today is very rich, because the major issue which has been affected, or the major areas which have been affected by COVID-19, is the supply chain. Supply chain is the one which ensures that a certain producer from a specific point of production is able to produce their goods and be able to export these goods, or be able to deliver these goods to a certain destination where there is a buyer. So when in that process, you find that a producer cannot be able to move his goods across to wherever they're supposed to be delivered so that he can receive payment, or a buyer cannot be able to access goods which is purchased or asked for, then that means there is from what I've seen at the international level and the local level, because it's two-way. I'm getting a notification that my audio is not that okay. I don't know. Are you getting me clearly? Because we had an issue some time back. Rashid, if you can confirm, or anybody.
Yes, I can now hear you clearly.
Okay, then.
Proceed,
Let's
please.
okay, no problem. So those are the two perspectives we're going to look at this from. We are going to look at this from the corporate side, and also, you see, when we're talking about supply, majorly we're talking about international trade, which deals with corporate, and then the aspect of individual. In that, it could be an individual receiving a particular service in terms of goods being supplied to them and the likes. And then there are other third players involved, like the carriers, who are also responsible. We understand as of now that international airlines have not commenced flights. So most of the airlines are actually complaining because they are being affected in terms of revenue, because they cannot be able to service their loans as an after effect of the broken supply chain. As per to the ships, the same case has also happened, even in the service industry. Even in the service industry, there was an incident when COVID-19, when COVID-19 just broke out. There was an issue of some certain industry, some ship which was supposed to dock at some port, but due to the suspicion that it had some people who had contracted COVID-19, it could not be allowed to dock. So that really also affects the aspects of service on the other side of the supply chain, because we have a contract. So I need to be on your cruise ship to South Africa for 3 weeks, and then I'm meant to be in the waters for over a month. So it means some of my things will not be able to be done, and that is a big challenge. But the major discussion we're going to have today is in regards to the aspects of supply of goods, because that is what is major. The service industry, of course, has been affected one way or another because of the communication. If communication cannot be seamless, then of course the supply chain will have to be affected, because it takes a certain businessman to travel from here to China to an industry, identify the goods. Once he has identified and ascertained the goods, then he can be able to make an order. If that cannot be able to be facilitated by the systems that there are, then it means that in one way or another will have to affect the supply chain. If the same is also, once he has identified the goods, the manufacturer has got to send the goods over to the port of Mombasa so that the Kenyan businessman can be able to pick the goods from Mombasa. If the shipping industry has also been affected by COVID-19, in that there is suspicion that China is the one which came up with the COVID-19, so we cannot be able to receive their ships, because there is that suspicion that their people, quote unquote, are COVID-19 infected. So the ship can be denied entry or denied permission to dock at the port. So that also raises issues. So that is majorly where the big problem is in terms of international trade. As to the local aspect, just to discuss it in a piecemeal, is the aspect of what we are having here in Nairobi, because Nairobi is the nerve center of everything that happens around the country. We had issues in regards to cessation of movement freely between Nairobi and Mombasa, and Nairobi and upcountry, that is going to the areas of anywhere beyond Limuru. So that also affects the process in one way or another, in that, of course, they didn't, the cessation didn't stop goods from moving, but it stopped people from moving. You see, vehicles do not move by themselves. Then there's the aspect of where the drivers need to have some certainty that they need to have the COVID-free certificate. That also comes in handy, and that affects the way goods are supposed to be moving. And that is another challenge. We have another third challenge, which we will be looking at, of interregional trade. Kenya or Mombasa has been, Uganda has been rated as the biggest consumer of services which come out of the port of Mombasa in terms of importing goods in the region. Now, the drivers of Kenya are carrying goods to Uganda, and then they are stopped at the border. They're being told, "We're not sure you guys, you have so many corona cases, we cannot be able to allow you until we're sure that you're corona free." And that causes a big problem, because it's not only Kenyan drivers going to Uganda. There are Ugandan drivers coming to Kenya also to come and pick goods. So when that aspect of discrimination comes in, people feel uncomfortable. Even with the COVID certificate clearance at the border, and then you are allowed to go into Uganda, you have had cases whereby, drivers could not stop their lorries anywhere, to buy even water or to buy even food in an hotel, because the locals could jump up and say, "You guys are bringing corona, why are you stopping here?" So that affects the psychological aspect of the drivers. And of course, next time, if I'm going to do that trip successfully, I don't think I will make another trip, because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm likely to be stoned at mere suspicion that I'm corona invested. So that causes a big breakdown in the supply chain, and that affects business at the end and makes life costly and expensive at the end of the day. And with that, it reduces the quantity and the quantity of trade that is happening. And when the quantity goes down, then government are not able to collect enough revenues, and that means the economy is going to spiral down. Same case as to the country. We cannot have many Ugandan goods being taken from the port of Mombasa. Then that in the net effect of that is going to result in an aspect whereby we are likely to have lesser taxes collected at the source at the Mombasa port. And with that, there is likely to be congestion if there is a free flow of ships. Mombasa is likely to be congested. And there is the aspect of quote unquote, if that may be the case, that 8 of these drivers who have been stopped from moving freely to wherever destination they're moving at, it means it leads to them having to stop their vehicles at some point, maybe at the border point. And that accumulation of so many drivers, as we have been seeing in the media, causes these people to interact. And this interaction is what, and then the spread of the virus as a result of that. Also, now Busia and Kajiado are some of the counties which are reporting high number of cases of COVID-19 because of this particular aspect. And with this, it needs a key strategic, a strategic decision to be made on how to deal with this. Apparently, within the region of East Africa, we have not been able to do that. That we failed. I think the ministers have been trying to meet, but still the issue has not been sorted. As of yesterday, I think I saw a big issue whereby the drivers were still complaining that they cannot be able to access the services of testing, and the testing, of course, takes 24 hours before they get the certificate, and that the local people themselves are complaining that, well, we're having these guys here and we are not sure of their status. If where they are going, they are not sure why are they here. So that raises serious constraints, and those are the side effects or the after effects of the whole process. But looking at it from the trade perspective, it means some goods are not going to be delivered. In one way or another, this could be essential goods which are needed. For example, the PPE, somebody is delivering PPEs to Rwanda. PPEs have been deposited at the port of Mombasa. Maybe it's a full container or 2 containers. It means the people in Rwanda will be expecting, they have paid for these goods, they are expecting delivery of this. So that can't be done because the driver is locked at the Uganda border at Busia or Maraba, be it. And that is going to, and in business, you see, failure to deliver within the required time raises sanctions, raises fines, raises issues of rescission of contract. And that in itself, of course, brings in a legal challenge right there. So this is where as mediators we need to be focusing. This is where as mediators we need to have a caucus to be able to be the people dealing with the we need to have let's say some platform where we can be able to engage with KEPSA, because most of these traders are represented by KEPSA or they are under the umbrella of KEPSA or the Chamber of Commerce. If we could have a one-line open channel of communication whereby we could be able, and now when it comes to the inter-trade within the region, it means we need to have a clear discussion within the region that instead of you guys going to court and this thing is going to take you for a very long time, these things can be mediated and you can come at a conclusion at a quicker at an early stage, so that it avoids you spending so much money in the courts and so much time in the courts because of such issues of the broken supply chain. Believe you me, people will not understand. If we have a contract, we expect you to deliver. If you tell me you're not delivering this week, that you've been tired at the Kenya-Uganda border, I'm in Rwanda, I will expect you at the earliest opportunity, that should be next week, to have delivered. Because failure of you not delivering the goods, it means I'm losing business wherever I had gotten the orders from. They could also be contracting someone else, because people have to be treated. That is using the case of the PPs. People have to be treated. You can't just hold things waiting for one person to deliver just because he was the one given the contract. It means that business is likely to go to someone else, and I will instead be surcharged for not delivering on time. So that is where the conflicts arise. That is where the challenges are going to be vested in, so that if there is no clear way of trying to solve these issues, if we as mediators are not going to be out there looking for these businesses, because these businesses can't come to us. This business has to be looked for. We have to be very strategic. We have to place ourselves at a vantage point to be able and willing, and of course show the capability and the expertise to solve these issues. So if we are not going to have this discussion, the earlier the better, with the likes of Kenya Chambers of Commerce and KEPSA, because these are the key stakeholders, and the government, so that they do understand that there is a recognized body which can be able to deal with these things. It doesn't have to go to court, because the scenario which we are having right now is a scenario whereby these guys have to go to court, and then we have to wait court to refer these matters to us. As the situation stands as of now, mediators are not mediating as much as opposed to arbitration, are not mediating commercial matters. So that is where we need to put our energies on and ensure that we are actually at a place where we are recognized by everyone, so that we can be able to take advantage of these things, because this is where the money is. We need the money, this is where the money is. So we need to be able to caucus, we need to be able to push, we need to be able to interact with the right channels. And we need to make our voice heard, and these people need to understand we exist, and we are competent and professional enough to be able to handle these issues. So that is what I could say for the regional. The same thing to the local business, maybe a farmer in Nyahururu has an order in Nairobi to supply potatoes for purposes of making chips in some of these eateries in town. And you see, this guy now ends up telling me that, you need to see, my vehicle has been stuck at Limuru, it can't be allowed in because my driver maybe does not have all the papers that is needed. You see, my clients are not going to wait that, oh, sorry, we can just be hungry and wait and come tomorrow when maybe the person will have delivered. That's not the case. If he does that for 2-3 days, it means I'm going to lose a lot of business. And we had a clear contract with them. So that is the nature of the broken supply chain we are actually looking at. So this person is likely, when COVID is finished or others actually can't wait, I will approach to court and say, this person has caused me economic suffering, because we had a contract for him to supply maybe 3 lorries of potatoes every week. He didn't deliver any for 3 weeks. The excuses he gave are in regards to his driver not being able to get the necessary clearances. So that will not be my problem. My problem is I've lost business. I've lost business, and that is going to cost me. So it should cost this person, and this person should be able to reimburse me, because our agreement was very clear, quote unquote. So those are some of the challenges which are being faced by the sector in terms of the broken supply chain. And once this happens, then we need to be there. We need to be available. We need to be known that we can be able to do this. What Kenyans like is litigation. They prefer just jumping up to court. It's because they don't like going to court. It's because, especially for businesses, it's not even advisable to go to court on such cases, because it takes so much time and it costs so much money, of which even within that period, you might even realize that it was a bad decision you made to go to court. But if they could get an avenue, a forum where they are sure that there exists a Wasilianahub, whereby I can lodge my complaint. This guy will also look for his mediator. We move in, and then we agree. We discuss this matter in terms of weeks or a few days, and then we reach an amicable agreement. Then that is the option they will be able to take. Of course, with the threat that if that fails, or if any party fails to comply with the agreement at the mediators, then it will escalate to court at the cost of the party who has refused to play the part. So that is what we need to look at as as mediators and be able to see ourselves to be a possible, credible, professional alternative to the court process. That is when we can be able to control what amounts of money come to us. But that is not going to happen anytime soon, because nobody will trust some unregistered people out there. So we need to quickly ensure that we are a profession and we have some regulations which regulate us, and we have licensed professionals who can be trusted to carry out these businesses, and people will be running to us. So that is the perspective I'm looking at it from. There is also the perspective of the international trade, which I've told you. Sikimta is saying that I'm breaking up, but I don't know whether I'm still breaking up. Hello?
Sorry, that was before. That was before.
Oh,
you're fine.
am I clearer now?
Yeah, you're clear.
Okay, thank you. It's good to, because we lost a discussion sometime back because of the breaking up. So from the international perspective, there are basic laws which govern this process. In terms of international, there is the issue of the supply chain is governed by a couple of known or recognized laws, especially in the perspective of supply of goods when it comes to the engagement. I'm just from court, just from court, and today there was a very interesting case. There was a very interesting case which was happening in that particular regard, which I would like to share with you, whereby a certain it was in the hearing stage, and when I came in, they were saying that somebody requested somebody to help him import a vehicle from Japan, and this person explained to the client that, you see, this is the much it's going to cost, the other cost which will come in terms of clearing the vehicle, and that they came to an agreement. Now, when it came to the agreement, the vehicle had already been delivered to Mombasa, and the guy had used his money to clear the vehicle. He asked that the client reimburses him his money, and then he will just deliver his vehicle. The client thought that, no, this cannot work. This guy told me he was going to import the vehicle and give it to me. So the money I gave him for importing should have been enough. So right there is a conflict. There is a conflict, and unfortunately for them, I think they didn't quite know what to do. This lady ended up reporting the mother to police. That becomes a criminal case, and he's saying that this person has conned me money that he was to deliver me a vehicle, which I haven't seen as yet. So the case is at the hearing stage. It has taken most probably 2 or 3 years in court. What this person does not know, that actually they can't be reimbursed the money if they have gone through the criminal process. But if it were to be the case whereby they had gone for a commercial court, then the aspect of the money being refunded could be something which could be in the negotiations. So there is those misunderstandings which happen when it comes to international trade, where people do not actually clearly understand what processes do happen. So at some point, there's going to be issues. There's going to be issues which are going to arise, in that you could find that somebody had ordered for vehicles from Japan to be delivered. Japan could not be able to deliver because it was hit with COVID earlier. So most probably, the person never did actually ship the vehicle, or the shipping company was supposed to ship the vehicle, never picked the vehicle for shipping. So that is another third party involved right there. So there is going to be a lot of issues in these particular circles. That's where we need to have forums like the Nairobi Arbitration Center embrace mediation. When they have embraced mediation, these matters can be arbitrated there between the supplier in Japan and the person who was supposed to receive the goods in Kenya. As mediators, we'll be invited upon to be able to come in between to solve some of these issues when our mediation center is fully recognized internationally and is known as a center for alternative dispute resolution. So this is where we should be looking at these things from. Otherwise, we could be having these discussions out here as we are doing right now, which is not a bad thing, because we are trying to empower ourselves, because knowledge is power. But then that would be it. That would be it. If we don't go ahead and push the people at the Nairobi Arbitration Center to move quickly, if we don't also push for these stakeholders, as I've said earlier, the KEPSA, the Kenya Chambers for them to recognize us, so that we can be at the center of solving these issues. We do not have a platform like Nairobi Arbitration Center, which is fully recognized for us to play our trade. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for us to actually be able to harness this piece. You think that it's not happening around? It's actually happening around. People are in these businesses, you will find that such an issue, people have written an agreement that the arbitration is supposed to be done in Hong Kong or in Singapore. Why not us? Because when it goes there, it means you either have to be recognized there for you to be given that business to mediate. People there have to know you. So that becomes a problem. I think we are letting our people down if you're not pushing for these things, because it means our people are going, smarters are going to be arbitrated in foreign lands where they might not have very clear understanding of what exactly it is that they are even arbitrating. Of course, they might be having a clue of the facts of the issues, but since it's in a foreign court, you already give up before even heading there. So if we have ours here recognized, and the international community or international business people do know that there exists a business arbitration center in Nairobi, that means there'll be more business for us. We can be able to actually discuss these issues, and you could find once you are registered with them, you could find that you're being called upon to take up a matter, or you're in the list in the role of the people who are recognized mediators. You could find somebody giving you a call and telling you that, you see, we have this issue, could you be my mediator? As it happens in the aspects of any other arbitration center, let's say for London. In the arbitration side, we are trying to do something, because I think there is some good progress. We have some few mediators whom I know of who are normally called to London to go and arbitrate, to the arbitration center in Tunis. I think there's a very active one there. And then there is also the Mauritius one. Those are the very key active ones in the region. And then, of course, Rwanda is trying to come up. If mediation, we also move it to that level. If we push mediation to that level, whereby we could be with Kimutai here, and then Kimutai is like, I'm not available this week. I will be in Singapore trying to handle a matter for my client. We know Kimutai has crashed in, and that would inspire us to also push at where Kimutai is, and that will be something which we will have done for ourselves and for the future mediators, because we need to push and fight. So everything that we have everything which we need for us to do what we can be able to do. All we need to do is, I think, for us as mediators, the major thing, and I can't sing this enough, is to push to have a mediation act, is to push to have a mediation regulations, is to push to have a Nairobi Center for International Arbitration, to have its recognition in the region. We need to sign with the Singapore Convention. Once these things are in place, we can freely now start marketing ourselves across the region. We can comfortably go look for business in Rwanda. We can go to Mauritius and look for business. And that will make us to be what it is that we want. We're just that close. We're just that close. If we push for these things, then we can be able to get. I don't know. There is, I think, somebody who indicated that is registered with the Dubai Code for the Center for Arbitration as a. You see that things are happening. Once we have these things, it means that is an individual doing that. But if we do that as a group, then it opens a bigger avenue. It raises visibility for Kenya, and people will start knowing out of Kenya, there are people you can rely on when it comes to mediation. So once a matter which is related maybe with a Kenyan is, of course, a Kenyan we do a lot of business with the Dubai and the Singapore and the likes. Once a matter lands there, and somebody would be prefer to take a Kenyan mediator rather than maybe a certain Arab whom he doesn't understand what they are even speaking or what they stand for, and who will be charging an arm and a leg. At least with Kimutai, you can be able to negotiate. You can even tell him, Kimutai, I have cows in Kitale, I will give you 5 cows. I don't have money right now, but see this matter through. So that is the kind of thinking we need to have, that we are letting our people down if we are not pushing for these things so that we can be able to be recognized. You remember, clients will not start telling you what to do. You have to be somewhere for a client to come to you. So, of course, our people have gone out and they are doing business, but they're being mistreated in foreign jurisdiction is because we have not identified ourselves as people who are capable or competent to handle these matters. Our government is dragging its feet and we're not doing much to push it. And our people are left at the devices of the. This is what we need to do for us to be recognized. So once Nairobi Arbitration Center is recognized with the London Center for Arbitration, the Singapore one, with the one in Dubai, we will be a center from Africa whereby even all other Africans or other regional people, could be Nigerians, when they go to do for business in Dubai, which they are very big business people. Last time I was in Dubai, a Nigerian walked into a mobile seller, and the mobile seller was very happy, calling him Alhaji, and then told everybody to walk out because he is sure the Nigerian is going to buy everything from there. So he told guys, kindly walk out. A big client just came in. You come after he's done. So that is the kind of respect this guy was commanding. Do you imagine if if that guy Kimutai is your client, how much is going to pay you? So that is what that's the kind of money we are losing. And you see, of course, when there is a dispute in such case, this guy will not start. Will not wait for you to be compliant. Then you will lodge the case. You lodge the case with whoever is ready, with whoever is direct that this person will help you. However much they will charge them, he doesn't want, because he wants this the issue to be resolved. So it's us letting ourselves down. We are letting our people down from the African continent. It's time we wake up and stand up to our obligations. We stand to be recognized internationally. I think that is the much I could say for now because of time, because I also came in late, unless we now entertain questions, which we can be able to handle and have the discussion further. Rashid, back to Rashid.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Nyamato, for that informative lecture about the current situation on how we can manage ourselves as mediators during this COVID-19 time in the supply chain field. So I think with what you told us today, we have been able to understand, or we have managed to demonstrate how practical it should be for us to engage ourselves with mediation in the local, at the local level, and also in the international arena, so that we can be able to build that credibility in the international sphere, rather at the global level. Now I'm going to see if there's any questions in the chats, and I can see that Mr. I think it was Mr. Mahinda. He said that in the scenario of Safaricom and that lady with a phone issue, what if the lady may be willing to meet for a mediation discussion, but Safaricom refuses and they say they have no case? How can the lady or mediator ensure that they sit to mediate? Maybe Mr. Nyamato would like to say something about that, unless maybe you did not you did not join the meeting early enough to get the beginning of the question. Are you in a position to understand?
Rashid,
Yes.
I didn't quite get what the story was with the lady because I met at the tail end.
All right. Now, what she
Unless
said.
she wants to pose the question again.
Yes. So let me see. Miss Margaret, I see Kimutai raised his hand. Let's hear from Kimutai.
Yes, Bwana Nyamato, maybe I can help you a bit here. The
Okay.
issue was that she had an unsatisfactory purchasing experience where when she got home, she realized what she had asked for, she did not get. So I was explaining to her that at that particular stage, you need to have the equivalent of a lawyer to write to the actual Safaricom or whoever the people who sold her the phone to explain that, look, this was not what I intended to purchase. I mentioned that to the lady. In other words, a proper complaint. So I was saying that once you have that complaint and the other person has accepted it and then agree to actually engage in a mediation, is we have to span that gap between the complaint by the individual and the acknowledgement by the two parties that there is a dispute. And that comes now to the question, which was actually Bwana Rashid was reading, was that until both parties agree they have a dispute and they want to proceed to mediation, it's a bit difficult. And then on top of that, whenever somebody is making a complaint, in this current social dynamic, your usual complaint is, sort me out or I'll go to court. In other words, that is always the implied threat behind any letter. So you can't say, sort me out or I'll take you to mediation. So that facility is not available. So Bwana Nyamato, I hope that explains enough of the circumstances.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting is the fact that I think she bought a phone. She bought a phone and she received the wrong phone, not the one she asked for, and now she feels shortchanged. And what happened? She already approached the people.
Yes, she did approach the people.
What was their reaction?
They did not. They said that because she had already proceeded to use the phone to maybe insert some contacts and to remove she had used the phone for quite a few days, around 4 days before she returned it. So because of that, they claimed that they could not accept the phone, and they even went further to suggest an option of having that phone being finding a buyer for that phone for her. They wanted to find a buyer for her, but she was not satisfied with that. So they said they could not help her further, and that she got stuck with the new phone, with the phone that she was not fit for her purpose. She had a purpose she wanted, but that phone did not fit the purpose. So that is where she got stuck, and it was not very long ago. It is just February. That is about 4 months ago.
Oh, okay. I guess that there is what is called the aspect of the presumption of there being a contract, which actually there's no presumption. There is a contract. It's only that the contract is not written, but there is evidence that she did purchase the phone. Now, what I think for her to do, if of course the people are behaving in a manner which they of course always do, they want to hide under the perspective that once goods are sold, they can never be returned. But that should not be a ground for you not to actually demand what it is that you ordered. What I don't understand is at the point of her taking the phone, did she quite check it through to know whether that was the phone she wanted, or she didn't know? She just picked it and left.
She did confirm that it's not the phone that she wanted, but she learned that later when she got home. But she was assured by the sales lady at the shop that it was the nice phone and it was what she'd wanted, until when she got home and discovered that it's not it will not serve the purpose that she wanted to use. So she went back to the shop. That's when she went back.
Oh, and clearly there's a big problem there, because she has a good case, because if she did explain to the person selling that this is the phone I need, it needs to be able to perform 1, 2, 3. There is under the Sale of Goods Act, there is a provision actually which states that if somebody gives a clear representation that the performance, the marketable quality of the phone, or the performance, the key description of the phone they need, and the person who is selling ends up misrepresenting that indeed this is the phone you need, this is what you want. And then after going, she realized that that's not the case, that she was actually lied to. She has a good case, she can be able to raise the complaint. Of course, I will assume that she has, and they will have said, no, once you took the phone, that is it. That is where the problem lies, in that now it's hard to make a move. Of course, as Kimtai, I think now I'm following what Kimtai was saying. What she needs to do is to express her intentions clearly, that I'm dissatisfied with the kind of phone you sold me. It's not actually what I described. It's not actually performing what it is that I wanted to purchase it for. It's incapable of serving my interests, which actually I was buying, because I'm buying a phone for a very particular reason, to perform some particular key functions. If these functions are not being done, then I have no reason to have that phone. That is something which she made a representation or gave a description of what she wanted to the professional at whatever this person was selling at the phone. So the professional ought to have seen through what it is that she wanted and then given exactly that. But in this case, what I'm getting is the fact that at that point, the professional decided to negligently misrepresent her. That you see, even this is a good phone, you can just take it and it will perform those functions. And then she relied on the misrepresentation to actually go ahead and take the phone, which has turned out that she was clearly misrepresented. I think she has a good case, yes.
There's even more to the story. She had actually placed an order for the phone. It had been identified. She was called and told and emailed or whatever that the phone is here. So when she went to the shop, she was going to pick a specific model.
Exactly.
When the sales lady was giving it to her, the sales lady is the one who opened the phone, started putting everything into it. And when she asked and said, is this the phone I ordered? They said yes. So with all that information, it's very clear that what she had wanted was made very clear, and she was not given what she had wanted.
Yeah, exactly. There is a lot of negligence on the part of the salespeople. So we had
agreed that basically she needs to write a letter telling the people that she has this dispute with them, and then seeing from there what the next step is. But like we were exploring the issues which come out, as in, you have to be able to say, if not, I will take legal measures. That has to be an implied threat in the letter. But it also has to be a situation when the person writes back to you and says, we think we'd like to do something, then you say, let's have a mediation.
Yeah, I think that is actually the right channel, because clearly from my end, as Kimta said, there is an issue. There is a legal issue. There's a big actually legal issue, because when somebody comes and trusts you that, because the lady is not a professional, but she knows clearly what she wanted. And she's able to determine that that's not what she got at the end of the day. Though the people selling try to misrepresent her, that you see, that is still as good as what you wanted. And you cannot take their word for it, because it's not performing what you wanted to perform. So the channel which Kimta is giving, whereby you start a clear complaint and tell them that if this is not going to happen, if you're not going to sort me out, clearly we should be headed in court. Of course, that will send a message to them that this is going to be bad. If they accept that indeed, if they write back, then is when maybe the option of mediation can be fronted, and you say, I have a mediator, could you guys want to appear before a mediator to mediate this issue through? If they say no, then of course, clearly that's a court case at their detriment. Of course, demand letters down there are written at their detriment. So that always scares people to the bone. So I think that is what she needs to do, because you can't have people selling people things the way they want and not what actually is serving their purposes or their needs. And I mean, I think I got to say something that she doesn't want somebody to go through such an experience. Of course, that is the right attitude that we need. That there are people who know their rights and they're able and willing to stand up for them. So that these people know that from now on, you cannot actually misrepresent somebody and take their money and then sell them something which is not going to work for them and then get away with it. They should know that there is something to pay, or there is some detriment to it. So that is, I think, what we need to do. That's what she needs to do. And I think Kimtai offered to help, so I think I will leave that to Kimtai to continue with the discussion further with that.
So, Mr. Nyamato.
Yes.
Okay, could you kindly shed some light on issues of the government procurement mechanisms and how how the disputes there are handled, and if there is it the same as private companies? How is the procurement process done in private companies and in the public government systems, and how are the disputes usually taken into action in case they happen? How are they handled when they happen?
Thank you, Rashid. Now, that is, of course, a very important perspective. When it comes to government and private, there is a clear differentiation in terms of procurement of services. Government, the procurement, because it's public money, there is a clear process which is outlined under the Public Procurement Act and disposal. It's called actually nowadays even the Disposal Act. So that process is clearly outlined there, in that a government body cannot just be able to procure services as if it's a private entity procuring the services. The channels which are established there are even to the extent that if a certain supply of services who had bid for a tender and feels that the tender was not clear enough, the tender was involved in a lot of underhand dealings, tender was involved, or whoever won the tender must have won it fraudulently or having been given inducements to the procuring agent, then there is an avenue or a platform where you can actually raise those questions. That is, there is a tribunal for procurement, for the Public Procurement Tribunal, which is a court where you can actually present your case and say, I bid for this tender. The rules are very clear that this is the process you are to follow, but I don't think that's the process which was followed in awarding this tender. Once you produce your evidence, which tribunals are normally a bit different from the courts, you just need to present your evidence in whichever way. There are actually others which you can even appear through just writing a letter detailing your case. But it's safer because this is for you to look professional. It's safer. It's not like I'm looking for business. It's safer to get an advocate to actually clearly outline your complaint. And once the complaint is safely has been lodged, and then the other party will be invited. And of course, the procuring agent will be the one defending, because the case you'll have to put it against them, for them to explain how they ended up picking this particular person whom you deem did not fit the description at the tender. So once that is clearly done, then you are invited for a hearing, and then the hearing, of course, you raise all those issues, compliance with the public procurement, whether that was done. That is where the major challenge is, and that's where government loses a lot of money. You realize with what we are having with most of the governors, the kind of cases which they are being purportedly being impeached on or impeached with are cases of procurement. And that is where we need to refocus also our energies, in that now those things can be actually be brought to mediation. If we could also be able to appear before that panel and be able to offer our services, there are some of those issues which the tribunal could feel that these ones can just go to mediation and then it can be sorted out at mediation. I think that is an avenue we can be able to take advantage of. As to the aspects of private entities procurement, is purely contractual. It's purely contractual. It's what it is that you agree. If a private entity gives out a tender out there, that is as good as it. They will of course outline their provisions, and whoever gets the tender, it's up to them. It's up to them. Now the only challenge can come is in delivery of the tender. Of course, for a private entity, if it gives you a tender, it means it feels that you are capable. It feels that you are capable. The only problem I see there is delivery. When there is delivery, it means that when a person has been awarded a tender by a private entity, it means the only other thing which they have to do is to deliver. If they fail to deliver, then, or they deliver and the private entity fails to pay on their part of the obligation, is where there is likely to be a dispute, which now, of course, will have to go to court, and that can be mediated. That can be mediated, or if necessary, if they recognize mediation, actually you can be able to be instructed by either party to do the mediation. But basically, the arrangement of procurement for private entities is purely contractual in nature. But for public, it's different. It involves the laid guidelines in the Public Procurement Act. There's a Public Procurement Act and the Disposal Act, so it means when government is procuring, it has to comply with the provisions of that act, and when it's also disposing government property, that is the clear process, which also has to. That's why it's called Public Procurement and Disposal Act. So those are some of the things which we have to take into consideration. That's Rashid.
Right. Thank you for that clarification and that clear information about the public and the private systems of procuring. So is there any other question anyone would like to ask? We will be taking questions. We have about 17 minutes before we close our session today. Seems it has been a very well managed session. We are now taking questions. If there is any question to Mr. Gibson, any comment, you feel there is something you wish to comment on, just raise your hand and we'll give you the opportunity to air your comment. So, Mr. Nyamato. Mr. Nyamato, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Now that schools are closed, what is next for the suppliers with long-term contracts?
Of course, in the aspect of contracts of supply, I think something else I would like to is a clause which is called force majeure. Force majeure is an interesting clause where a contract can be affected by other external factors which are not within the control of either party. So you need to stand at a place where you understand at the point of writing the contract, there is likely to be an unforeseen circumstance which is likely to lead to non-performance of each of the parties' obligations. So now that the schools were closed indefinitely and they were closed through a statutory order, it's the government which said schools should be closed. So if you are supplying a school, you had a contract for supply of some certain commodities, let's say food, and these schools are closed. So I think if you didn't have that particular aspect of the contract or that clause of force majeure, then it means you need to stand in line, because you also don't need to behave as if you are living in a different planet. But that being said, there are circumstances whereby maybe they had not paid you the money which they were supposed to pay you. You can actually ask to be paid specifically to where you had performed. There's a remedy, which is an equitable remedy, which in law we say you can ask for specific performance that kindly pay me. I know we agreed I was to deliver for 3 months. I could not be able to deliver for these 3 months. I was to be paid after the 3 months are done, after I've paid. Now, there is a situation here. I cannot be able to deliver and you guys are closed. Kindly pay me to where I'd be able, and then we'll have the contract being closed at that particular point. So if they are not reasonable enough, or either party is not reasonable enough to understand that, because I mean, you can't also be able to claim money which you have not worked for. You have to show proof. So to that very end, I think the specific performance will be able to do. And for the major contracts, then the agreement for force majeure, the clause for force majeure kicks in automatically. So those are some of the key components in terms of contracts of supply chain, which are going to be affected. So those are some of the grounds under which somebody can be able to make the argument. And thanks for that question, Rashid. I'd almost forgotten about that. So for schools which are closed, I think either go seek specific performance and have the contract to be rescinded. If you are not supplied as yet, maybe you are to supply maybe material for the exam, which exam never happened, but you had a contract from January. Then you see you do not supply, then you just ask for rescission, the contract to be rescinded, so that the parties go to their former position. You are not going to supply the exam anyway, and of course they are not going to need your services, because there are some schools which are uncertain whether they are going to do that at the end of the day. So those are some of the arrangements, those are some of the arguments you need to have in mind, that there is a peaceful way of terminating the contract, but of course this is not as straight as it is. There's likely to be disputes. As to the issues of specific performance, you can agree to a specific performance, but of what? Maybe the supplier is saying I deliver to this much, and the receiver of the supplies is saying no, we have no record of that. We are only in what we have in stock is what we think you supplied up to this level, and that's likely to cause conflict. And that's where now I think maybe mediation comes in, or once they go to court, that they can be referred to mediation. Or if you are known to them, you can actually get business. You can be able to say that I can come in and mediate.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes, what is that thing somebody has supplied, they get an invoice. Here is the supply invoice, which I gave you, and you have a copy of the same. So once they come, then somebody cannot be able to say that I didn't see those things. So those are some of the issues which are likely to be raised. Or maybe somebody asked for, over quoted beyond what it is that they were supposed to pay. There could be a scenario where somebody has maybe is supposed to supply some goods, and for him, he also has procured the goods from someone else, and he has nowhere else to sell these goods. The key purpose for procuring these goods is for supply, and this supply has been cut short midway and is going to remain with some surplus. They could raise the argument that I don't have anywhere to take these goods, so kindly let me deliver everything that I have, which was meant for the 3 months, and you pay me my whole amount. You see, that is likely to be a conflicting situation. The others will be like, when if you deliver the whole thing, where are we taking it? We don't have people who are going to consume these commodities. So kindly stay with your commodities, find business elsewhere. But for us, our business should be done from here. So that is likely to be a crisis point. There is likely to be an issue, and that is where Mediator is supposed to come in and be able to mediate and bring sobriety to the whole issue. So that does happen. So people do not only go to court for aspects of not being paid or rescission of the contract. The people could actually be in agreement, but whether they are agreeing to is what the problem is, where the problem is, and that is where, as a mediator, you need to focus and be able to channel your energies to that and see how you will be able to actually bring a clear decision in that effect, so that the dispute is brought to an end. Yes, Rashid. Oh, there's also another issue, I think, which is being raised by Wangari from the chat box, where she's saying that for many businesses, there are deals with silent, not written contracts. It is routine supply. How is it able to be handled when there is a break in the supply? I think that's what I've just said at my tail end. It doesn't have to be one where there has to be a very clear contract, but there can be a presumption of a contract by showing of some evidence that I've been supplying, and these are the invoices I have here, and they have been paying me this much. So if somebody is able to demonstrate that he's been paid a certain amount for certain period for supplying or certain quantity which you can be able to prove with the pro forma, then that comes in and he can be able to prove his case and say, you see, I'm not coming from the forest out of nowhere to claim. I'm claiming something which I've been doing and something which I'm entitled to. So whether there is a contract or no contract, you will need witnesses who will come and testify as to the knowledge of such business. And of course, you will need some evidence of maybe an invoice. Whether there existed a contract or not, kindly endeavor to have something like an invoice which you can show that you actually supplied something. Because in contracts, the onus lies on the person alleging. If you are alleging you supplied, you show proof. If you say that there was no contract, show us something alternative to actually convince us that there existed a business. So that is, I think, the currency under which that operates. Rashid.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Nyamato. And just to look at the charts again, I see that there is some information that has been shared by Ms. Wangari. She has shared a link, and it's clearly, it says that it's about building a socially reliable, responsible supply chain, keeping subcontractors on track, and it says that subcontracting is an issue that should be identified during a social audit. The upcoming ISO 45001 requires that an organization looks beyond its own walls, that companies are responsible for the health and safety of all individuals who perform work, not only those directly employed. In this way, the ISO hopes to ensure a high level of health and safety among a wider group of affected workers. This means that the activities of external organizations that are influenced by and exert influence on an organization's health and safety objectives and the processes established to achieve them are included within the scope of the standard, the ISO. These external organizations that are influenced by and exert influence on the organization include contractors and outsourced firms. Hidden subcontractors can be an operational and reputational risk. I think it continues, and anyone who'd like to look at it further can visit the link, which is a link to a blog. She shared also another link that leads to the government website on tenders, which provides for the public procurement information portal, which is a portal for the public procurement processes there. And there's a message from Lile Pilas, or Ruth Mwangi. She says, she asks a question. She says, how should a mediator handle one party who seems to have an underlying psychological challenge that is significantly affecting the transaction quality as well as the mediation efforts? That's for you, Mr. Nyamato. Would you like me to read all the questions, then you'll answer later, or would you prefer that you answer each question as we go by?
I think let me just respond to that as you'll be going through the others, and then you may after I'm done with that, you'll come in with the others. Huh? The one on the one you just read, the last one on psychological something. Huh? When you're dealing with a mediator who is psychologically affected, I think the training that must have, I don't know where I think people have gone to various trainings, but I think the person who was training me in mediation did raise something of the sort. And what they advised us is that you first need to understand where this particular party is coming from. Because if somebody is affected, you cannot presume that they are in their right senses or are in their normal composure to proceed with. If that is affecting actually the transaction itself, you need to pull them aside, understand where they're coming from. You need to be able to connect with them first, have a one-on-one with them, be able to connect and understand where, because in mediation, it's a very intimate process. You need to connect with the people you're mediating with. Failure to connect, you might not actually understand how you are resolving the dispute. Some disputes are very funny, even in courts, especially when you're dealing with family matters, and those are the ones which have been sent for mediation. You could find that there exists an issue, people are in court, but what they are trying to litigate on the face value is not actually the problem. There lies another problem elsewhere. And once you are able to go beyond the veil and be able to determine that actually this is where the problem lies, and you're able to speak to that problem or ask them to be able to be frank and open about the issue, when they actually bring that to the fore, you realize that the dispute de-escalates. Maybe somebody is feeling like they are not being respected in whatever it is that they are doing. You see, that can affect. I think mostly for women, they take that very personally, and when they don't get I'm sorry to but that is my experience. I don't know what the rest of you. If you are not able to connect with this person and understand that this is the challenge, that's why in mediation we have breakout sessions, so that you have a one-on-one with your client, know where they're coming from, know where the issue is. Now, that will take a skillful mediator to actually get a breakthrough on that. And once you make that breakthrough, once you come back now into the joint session, then it becomes way easy to solve that particular issue. Because whatever this person will be saying, you'll be getting it more clearly. As the other one will also be responding, and that will help you as a mediator to actually advance the case of this person who has been maybe on the face value, not saying much or just saying very conventional things where they are deep under, there are some things hurting them seriously. So once you're able to speak, or we are able to raise the issues which she can't raise herself or himself, which is affecting the whole transaction, then you will be able to be solving the problem. Something which does not happen in court. That's where we need mediation. For courts, courts do not care. What you state is what they go by. There are some things which could be so personal, or which could be deeply ingrained into somebody's maybe character, which somebody will not want to bring, or might not know how to bring them out. So you see, for courts, you're not afforded that opportunity. You're not afforded that opportunity. And the lawyers don't also care that much. All they want to do is, it's an adversarial process. We're dealing adversarially. State your case, I state mine, period. But for mediation, I think it affords people a one-on-one, one where the mediator has to be understanding to both parties, be able to understand where they're coming from. That is where mediation should be the golden thing, because once people have mediated a process all the way, it will be only crazy ones who will opt not to opt again want to go back onto the dispute, unless maybe somebody has fundamentally breached the agreement.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Nyamato. As they say, one good quality of a mediator is intelligence, being able to understand other people's emotions, to be empathetic, and to be able to bring out their emotions to the other party while you are the mediator. So, thank you for those remarks. I see there's a hand raised by Emerald. Emerald, yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again, Mr. Nyamato, for the illuminating presentation. I wanted to comment on two aspects. One is the question of what we are seeing now, an emancipated workforce, because now more and more we see a reality of a workforce that may no longer deem it necessary to conform to the old norms of engagement and interactions, because now we are seeing even remote working it's not something foreign, it's a possibility. Is this something that you see that can directly affect the supply chain or break what we've been discussing, and what would be the role of mediators in that regard? Secondly, you also mentioned something about mediators, us as mediators taking a vantage point and aligning ourselves strategically. So we know that there's going to be an influx of disputes based on even what we've just discussed this afternoon. And I think it is also safe to assume that, of course, the courts cannot or may not be able to adequately accommodate all these cases. So is it viable for us mediators to present mediation as an alternative that will enable disputants to quickly and, more importantly, cost effectively craft a bespoke solution that can be able to serve their interests as disputants under the current circumstances, which we can reasonably say was unfathomable to most of us just a few months ago, and most importantly to the disputants at the point at which they were entering the agreements. Would you say that this is a strategic way or a strategic line of handling, making sure that we get a seat at the table? I don't know, those are my two, if you can comment on those two.
Thank you, Emerald. Very important points you raised there, and thank you for the question. The first question, I didn't quite get it, but the second one, which I think it's intertwined. I think there are kind of three questions from my side. The first one, I didn't quite get the first part on when you started, but for the second one, I got the aspect of us coming up with a strategic, cost-effective means of resolving disputes out there. That I said because you see now, conventionally, as you have also pointed out, is the aspect that things are not going to be normal, and they're not going to be normal anytime soon. COVID-19 has been confirmed that it's going to be us forever. It's not something which is just going to disappear like rain. It's something which is going to hang around. So we need to craft our way on how to manage our lives and our existence around COVID-19 so that we don't end up getting affected so much. So as alternative dispute resolution mechanism, this is our golden opportunity, because the courts are not going to serve the purpose for which they have been serving. They are going to be overwhelmed first. Secondly, they are going to be challenged in terms of delivery. Thirdly, they do not offer the bespoke, which you have actually raised, solution to issues. That's where you find somebody appealing a case all the way up to the Supreme Court. But for mediation, if mediation is taken advantage of, if it's handled by professionals, it's very difficult to find that a matter which has been mediated successfully, again, finding its way back to court or people breaking that particular arrangement. Because the reason as to why I'm saying this is because you have a one-on-one attachment with these people. unless somebody is an endemic liar or somebody is socially a social misfit who has no respect for anything they say, because it's kind of a covenant. For mediation, I take it to be kind of a covenant, because as a mediator, you are helping them mediate. They're coming up with their own solution. You are there to oversee. You are not participating in giving them solutions. They are the people, the solution should be able to be coming from them on how to solve the matter once and for all. So in that particular respect, in this era of COVID-19, I think should be able to come in, and in that, once we have gotten into a covenant with somebody, it's only a fool who will want to go against it. Of course, there are fools in every market. There are fools. So, but the kind of cases we'll be getting of people negating these agreements or covenants are very few. As opposed to court cases. Court cases have a lot of variables. And what people do not understand, they always blame lawyers and say, lawyers are bad people and they do all these bad things. What people do not understand is the nature of our legal system. The nature of our legal system is adversarial. Adversarial is not out to find the truth. You're not interested in the truth. That is the kind of training we've been trained on. The courts are not out to find the truth. The courts are to believe which case has been presented to convince the court as per the law. Whether they are lying or not lying, but provided they have made their case, they have presented their case in a particular manner which is believable, and they have evidence to support it, that is what the court will award for. That's why people will always appeal, hoping for a better decision in the next phase, which rarely comes. But for mediation, that is different. For mediation, that is different because you extract out of somebody a covenant. You extract an understanding that if we do 1, 2, 3, there won't be any issue. The other party says if 1, 2, 3 is also done, you wouldn't see me and you will never hear me anywhere. So with that, it's very difficult to go back on that, unless maybe there are some issues which were not raised, or it could be on another. So this is the era for Emerald. This is the era for bespoke alternative dispute resolution, which is cost effective. Of course, mediation is cost effective as opposed to the courts. Just showing up in court is already traumatic.
Yes.
It's very traumatic, but appearing before a mediator is not as traumatic as appearing before court. So this is therefore we need to put ourselves strategically on your third question, and be able to provide ourselves as the people actually who are out there to sort issues. So if we let this opportunity pass, or we draw our feet, then the chance might elude us forever.
Okay, thank you again for that. The first part of the question was in regards to an emancipated workforce. We have seen that remote working is a new reality. Yes, so we are now dealing with a workforce that may no longer deem it necessary to go back to the old norms of engagement. And in your first part, the first part of your presentation, you had mentioned a part on goods, where you may have goods to supply, but you don't have, a way or transport for how to transport it to reach the other party. So in that case, what I guess what I want to ask is the magnitude of conflict that this can bring in terms of the supply chain, and what role as mediators do we have to play in that case?
Oh, okay. Now I get you clearly, and thank you. Now, in this particular respect, we are foreseeing a situation where there is going to be quite a number of cases out there. That is the scenario, because we are very aware. That this is the scenario which is happening, and we cannot be able to bury our heads like the ostrich and say let things pass. I think that's what is happening. As mediators, this is our time to show up at the platform and be able to fire the warning shots to everyone and say, guys, we are here and we have arrived in style. We are here to sort this problem. We think we have a solution to what has been ailing you people. Going to court is not the best solution. Or even if you go to court, you still have an avenue to still come to us. Because a party in a case can be able to suggest that I will want this matter mediated, and the court will be happy to refer the matter to mediation. Because they don't have a reason, because coming to court was the willingness of the parties to come to court. So if they are willing to have the matter mediated, then that is their solution. So I think this is the opportune moment. This is the opportune moment to actually do that. As to the issue of this era of working remotely, you see, there is already a conversation around that. You see, if you are still employed and you are working remotely, you're actually working remotely from your home, then your employer should be able to pay pay for your rent. You see, that is a discussion which is coming up now that people are going to work remotely, because you are delivering, your home has been turned into an office. So that should mean something under the terms of labor. So labor laws are meant to change. We will have disputes around that. We'll have disputes around that, whereby some other employers will want to say, no, you guys are working from home, so we are going to cut the salary because you are eating from home as if you are supplying your own food. They will want to cut their costs in one way or another. So there is likely to be disputes around that. So we need to be anticipating such so that we can be able to raise ourselves in that particular manner and be able to resolve such disputes. Where when somebody raises such an argument, you also need to be aware that there is a conversation out there in that particular regard. And that is, I think, what we need to do as of now. Emerald, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nyamato, and I'd like to thank everyone who participated in this session today. So, the normal time by 12 minutes, it has been a very informative session, and I encourage us to keep up the spirit of sessions, and at the end of the day, we will be the winners and we will benefit, and we keep learning more every day. So, if in case somebody has a question before the next time we have a session, before we begin the real session, questions. So I'd like us to close the session as usual with the national anthem, the second paragraph in English. No, in Swahili. English is very difficult. So the second paragraph, the second stanza, sorry, Law has told me, second stanza in Swahili. So let's begin. Taifa letu ndio wajibu wetu, Kenya itaishi, tuungane mikono pamoja kazini na siku. So thank you everyone. Have a good day and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.